You are walking down a street. Ahead of you, maybe 30 feet, there is a man on the sidewalk. He is face down. He is not moving. There are other people around. A few have slowed to look. Most are walking past. You slow down. You look at him. You look at the people around you. None of them have stopped. None of them look particularly alarmed. You think, someone must have already called. Or maybe he's sleeping. Or maybe this is something that happens here. And people know not to intervene. You keep walking. You have just made a decision. You don't think of it as a decision. It felt like reading the situation correctly.
It wasn't. And the reason it wasn't is the subject of this video.
On March 13, 1964, a woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in Kew Gardens, Queens. The attack happened in 2 phases, over the course of roughly half an hour. 2 weeks later, the New York Times published a story. The headline, 37 Who Saw Murder Didn't Call the Police. The story said that 38 of Genovese's neighbors had watched from their windows. That they had heard her screams. That the attack had gone on long enough for multiple people to call, and none had. The story became one of the most discussed news articles in American history. It launched an entire field of psychological research. It was cited in textbooks, in congressional hearings, in sermons. The phrase, bystander apathy, entered the language. There was just one problem. Decades later, researchers went back to the primary records. The 38 witnesses figure could not be verified. The New York Times' own Metro editor later acknowledged the number was imprecise. Documentary filmmaker James Solomon interviewed surviving witnesses and found a more complicated picture. Some people had thought it was a domestic dispute. At least one person did call the police. But the call was misrouted. A neighbor held Genovese as she died. The story that made bystander apathy a household phrase was itself an example of how narratives about group failure spread without anyone stopping to check. But here is the thing about the Genovese story: it was wrong in its details. It was not wrong in its implication. Because the research it inspired, run by 2 psychologists who read the Time story and decided to test whether it reflected something real, found something that has replicated dozens of times since. The effect is real. The case that launched it was exaggerated. The science it produced is not. John Darley and Bibb Latané were at a dinner party when someone brought up the Genovese case. Both were social psychologists. Both were skeptical of the moral failure explanation. They thought it was probably something simpler. Something structural. In 1968, they built an experiment. Participants sat in a room filling with smoke. Smoke piped in through a vent, staged to look like a possible fire. Some participants were alone. Some were with 2 other people, who were actually actors, instructed to notice the smoke and do nothing. Alone, 75% of participants left to report the smoke within 6 minutes. Some within 30 seconds. With 2 passive others, 10%. Not 50%. Not 30%. 10%. The room was filling with smoke. Most people sat in it. Why? Because they looked at the other 2 people in the room. The other 2 people appeared unconcerned. So they concluded, this is probably not as serious as it seems. Someone would have said something by now. The other 2 people were also looking at someone, seeing someone who appeared unconcerned, and concluding the same thing.
Everyone was using everyone else as evidence that there was no emergency. Everyone was wrong. And everyone's wrongness was everyone else's evidence.
Darley and Latané called it pluralistic ignorance. The group, taken together, knew nothing. Each individual, looking at the group, concluded they should do nothing. Darley and Latané ran a second experiment. This time, participants believed they were in a group discussion over an intercom when one person, an actor, appeared to have a seizure. Alone, 85% sought help within 60 seconds. With one other bystander, 62% sought help. With 4 other bystanders, 31%. The more people present, the less any one person helped. Latané formalized this: in a group of n bystanders, each person's felt share of responsibility is approximately 1 divided by n. 2 people, each feels 50% responsible. 10 people, 10% each. 38, just over 2% each. At 2%, the felt responsibility falls below the threshold most people need to act. This is not selfishness. It is arithmetic. The group does not produce inaction through cruelty. It produces it through division. Think about the last time you were in a meeting where something was wrong and nobody said anything. The last time you saw something in a group chat and waited to see if someone else would respond. The last time you were one of 38. This is not history. On April 18, 2010, 46 years after Kitty Genovese, a man named Hugo Alfredo Tale-Yax collapsed on a sidewalk in Jamaica, Queens at around 5:40 in the morning. He was 31 years old. He had just intervened to stop a woman from being robbed. He had been stabbed. Surveillance footage recorded what happened next. Over the following hour and 20 minutes, more than 25 people walked past him. Several stopped to look. Some shook him. One photographed him. Some may have assumed he was sleeping. His appearance suggested he might be homeless. By the time firefighters arrived, he had been dead for hours. The context is not identical to a staged laboratory. People in an urban environment at 5:40 a.m. have different cues, different assumptions, different risk calculations than people in a psychology lab. But the mechanism is the same. Each person looked at the people before them who had not acted, concluded that non-action was the appropriate response, and kept walking. The chain of inaction was built one person at a time. Each link in that chain thought they were reading the situation correctly.
The inverse is also real. One person moving first reliably breaks the effect. The entire variable is whether someone is willing to be the first, before they know if anyone else will follow.
The man on the sidewalk at the beginning of this video was Hugo Tale-Yax. I didn't tell you his name at the start because I needed you to walk past him first. To feel the logic of it. To recognize the reasoning chain. Someone must have already called, "He's probably fine, I don't want to overreact," as reasoning you have used before. Not necessarily on a sidewalk. In a meeting where something was being decided that you thought was wrong, and you looked around and saw that nobody else was raising a hand, so you didn't either. In an organization where a pattern was becoming visible, and you waited for someone with more authority or more proximity to address it first. In a group chat where something happened and you watched the message sit there unresponded to, and you didn't respond either because nobody else had yet. The bystander effect does not require a crime. It does not require a stranger. It requires a group, an ambiguous situation, and the absence of a first mover. You have been in that situation this month. The question is not whether you would have called for Kitty Genovese in 1964. The question is simpler and harder than that. In the situations you're already in, the ones where something is wrong and the group is looking at itself, are you waiting for someone to move first? Or are you the first mover? Because the data says that if you are, others will follow. Nearly every time.